Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Rena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started.
Hey, lady.
Hey. How's it going?
Oh, it's going good. So I think I know what topic I would like to talk about today.
Okay, let's shoot. What is it?
I mean, it's super fresh. It's just happened this week, right? This past week. Yeah. Yes. And I'm sitting here laughing. I've got this snicker on my face here, and I know you're going, what are you up to? But I think we talked about, like, I'd asked you before, like, hey, can we talk about this? And I don't know that you knew I was ready to talk about it so soon, but I am. And so when you asked me, you're like, are you sure you're okay? I'm like, dude, I'm okay. You're the one who's not okay. So this kind of ties back to, for anybody who listened to the episode of the one that you had to, the week where you didn't drop an episode because I did something wrong.
Which you still don't know what it is.
I still don't know what it is, but I think from what I've gathered or gleaned or just convinced myself of was that I did nothing wrong. You know, when do I... Me? I'm never the problem. I think we've established that, right?
Yeah. Clearly, yeah. It's not you.
It's not me. But I think it was, you were looking out for me because I must have said something because we've had some drama on my team. Ooh. Imagine that.
Yeah, no drama, but just plenty of it.
Well, and the funny thing is the timing, because it was exactly a year ago that my front desk imploded, and I know I've shared a lot about that, and here we are a year later, and it's come full circle.
Yeah.
And so I must have said whatever I said, and you were like, things are so raw in your office right now, like we shouldn't drop this one right now. And I'm just like, I don't know what I said. Like, and I that's what I signed up for. Yeah. When I've come on this podcast, I'm sure I say a lot of unpopular things. I don't know what I'm saying as I'm saying. It's literally dropping out of my mouth. And so anyway, clearly it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you looking out for me. Anywho, so I'm sure whatever you're going to title this episode, people will already know where this is headed. But how do you fire somebody? And because that's where we are in this summer hotbed, and my recurring theme of imploding departments in my office at this time of year. Here we are again, round 2. This is like deja vu of where we were exactly a year ago.
Exactly a year ago.
But at least to date, we have not fired 3 in one day. So it's not exactly the same, but okay, I'll watch my words here.
It still occurred with one person.
Right. And it's just one person. So, infer whatever you will from that comment. As to date, it's one person, and I hope it's not anymore.
Yes,
I really do.
Yeah,
I really do. But I feel like I have done everything that I can because I did not want to repeat of last year.
Exactly.
And funny enough, the one we did have to let go this week at the beginning of the summer, I remember us having to have a conversation, and she's like, well, I just think you're going to fire everybody at the end of this summer like you did last summer.
Yes. It's apparently been the chatter that this is
what I do.
This is what you do. You keep people through the summer and then
just to get the help I need and then let them go. Yeah, because that makes a lot of business sense.
Right. It's a smart strategy.
It's a smart strategy for a business to spend a lot of time, money, investment, and training and onboarding and all of that, but only to turn around and fire you. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's what every advisor advises us to do.
Oh, yeah.
Right, Bethany? That's what you've been telling me from day one. Yeah.
Bring somebody on and just keep them just as long as you need them, and then kick them off the boat. I mean, that makes sound the most sense.
Yeah. So, anywho, she comes at me with that in June, and I was just like, first of all, like, what are you talking about, first of all? And I was like, let me tell you what happened last summer. So I kind of had to go through, y'all remember whatever, the thief, the incompetent, the whatever it was, whatever the reasons that we had last year.
Yeah.
The hothead.
The hothead,
right?
Yep.
So I kind of was like, I don't want to do any of that. And you've already seen all the investments I've already made in training y'all, like thousands of dollars bringing in Scheduling Institute and doing all this other stuff. So to me, it's like, if you had this self-fulfilling prophecy that that was my plan at the end of the summer, if that's how you're justifying in your own head, like, well, there's nothing I can do to make her happy, she's going to fire me anyway. You know what? Good. Well, it came to full circle fruition for you then. So, I will say, and this may have been right around the time of the podcast that you didn't end up airing back then, but I had to pull them in because I'd had enough. There was some tipping point moment that I was just like, you know what? I've had enough. You people are not taking your job seriously, or you're not taking me seriously, or you really don't care about our patients, or all three. I don't know which one it is, but you and I couldn't figure out who was the culprit. Like, if we took one out, would the others suddenly be like, oh, thank God she's gone, and now we can turn around? It's the weirdest thing.
It was baffling to both of us.
Yes. Yeah. And really, people, like 4 people that are so capable.
Yeah.
I think that's what's maddening. It's almost like when you watch your kid and you're like, I know you can do this, but you're in your own head and you can't, and I don't know how to get you out of your own head. Yep. And finally to the point of where it was just like, there's nothing more I can do. Mm-mm. I can't. I've literally done everything. So I now need to look at other options. So anyway, fast forward, how we finally decided which one needed to go was major attitude problems, major entitlement. And so we had a couple back to back to back, and maybe I could share those in another episode. I'll not share those this time, but bottom line, I finally was just like, I'm done. Yeah. I'm done. This is not only are you not performing in a competent manner in your job, but it's a major culture issue. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the problem. It's all 4 kind of have like strengths, but then weaknesses. And I'm like, I don't know which way to juggle this. Like, who is causing the others to not perform at their peak?
Right.
Because they're all capable. But she was the outlier, mm-hmm. the winner, the gold medalist in the culture issue. She won hands down. And so I think that was last Thursday afternoon, where I was just like, I cannot believe she said and did that. I've had it. And I messaged you and I was like, Bethany, when are you available to come?
Yeah.
Let this person go. Mm-hmm. And you were going to be in the office anyway, mm-hmm. on Monday. Mm-hmm. So I was like, yeah, we can get through the weekend. We're fine.
Yeah.
Well, of course, on Monday morning, she messages me and says, I've got a migraine. I'm not coming in today. Which in my mind, I was like, she knows the writing's on the wall because she knows what she said and did both Thursday and Friday and the week before. And I bet you anything she is on a working interview. She does not have no migraine. She is. So I still didn't know, but I was like, dude, hold on. So she's not even here for you to term that day.
No.
But she may resign herself, which changes everything. So let's just hold tight and see where we're going with this. Well, the deadline, I guess, that we were up against was this Friday was the Southwest Dental Conference. Mm. And the following, like Monday, we're going to our team building.
Right.
So I'm like, I'm not going to treat you to the Southwest Dental Conference, and I'm not going to treat you to, so this needs to happen at the latest by Thursday. Mm-hmm. And so as of like the weekend, I went ahead and canceled her registration and canceled her spa thing and all of that. So I wouldn't get charged for all of that. But she didn't know all of this yet. So I was like, the sooner we get her out. Well, then now here we are. Monday, she didn't show up. Tuesday, is she going to show up or not? And Thursday's kind of my deadline. So I was getting antsy. Well, I wasn't in the office Wednesday or Thursday. And then she did show up Tuesday. So I was like, I wasn't prepared. And I needed to leave early Tuesday anyway. So all of this to say, to get back to the subject here was, how do you fire somebody?
Yeah.
And I knew, because I've been doing this long enough now, and I've had some miserable firings when it was just me. And now, since I've been working with you for forever, you take care of it. But I've never really asked you the details. I know you say it's short, sweet, 2 to 3 minutes. And so because I wasn't going to be there, I was like, hey, associate, you up for this? And of course, he's a non-emotional. He's black, white, like whatever. He's like, yeah, I don't have a problem doing it. Okay. So I call him Tuesday. I'm like, okay, well, it looks like it's going to be you on Wednesday doing this then. And he's like, yeah, I'm down. And I'm like, okay, but but what are you going to say?
Yeah. Do you have a plan?
Do you have a plan? So I'll stop here. Bottom line, he was like, and I'm just like, dude, that's not a plan.
Yeah.
So you're going to fall into the same trap as me, which is talking too much.
Yeah.
Because to me, I'll come back to what I would have done. So I'm gonna quit talking. I'm gonna turn it over to you, and I think I learned a lot from you in this because I've never really asked beyond what he asked.
Yeah.
And so when I really put his feet to the fire, I was like, okay, pretend like you're about to fire me. What are you gonna say? And he's like, I'm like, I'm with you, man. I don't know what to say because what I would say leads to the disaster that I've had every time I fire somebody. So you and I got on the phone, and I thought this was really, really valuable stuff for our audience here because we don't know. And then after you're done, I'm sure you'll tell us what we do wrong, and then I can tell you what I would have done wrong in this case. And so anyway, that's why I think it's a valuable topic because I don't think most of us know how to fire somebody effectively.
No, and you wing it through, and oftentimes it can blow up in your face pretty badly if you wing it through. So, and I will say some of the things that I'll say are kind of counterintuitive. It's like, really, that a lot of people, when I say the strategy, is like, that's not going to work, but it does. It absolutely works. And
I'll be honest, I kind of thought that too until I was dialoguing with you. Mm-hmm. And when you and I were dialoguing on Tuesday, I was like, okay. Which is why, again, I want to do this podcast because, I mean, for the most part, hopefully most of us haven't had to do this very often. I really haven't. Like, I think most of the employees that have left that I had to fire, I don't even know, 1, 2, maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
But then, like, they typically either resign or know the writing's on the wall, or then you've stepped in. So we don't know how to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, most don't. And it's not frequent enough that you're like, ooh, let me go read a book on how to properly terminate somebody's employment. So I would say first and foremost, know the laws in your state. So again, we have a lot of freedom in Texas to fire whoever we want to fire for whatever reason, really for the most part, unless it's discriminatory or things like that. But for the most part, you need to know if there's certain protections that employees have in place, documentation that you need to have.
So where would I look for that?
So the Workforce Commission in that particular state. So ours is called, of course, Texas Workforce Commission, but every state has one, and they'll have. There's suggestions and sometimes rules or parameters in place that employers need to know before they term somebody. Now, I will say, a lot of times that doesn't always apply to small business, which is what most of our companies are. So you may look up employment laws and you're like, oh, there's all these, rules and regulations, but that applies in a lot of cases, that applies to places that are 50 employees or more. And so I would say just do a double check before you're terminating somebody. I would say that's probably a text message I get the most is, hey, I feel like I need to fire this person. What do I need to know? What do I need to do? So just make sure you do. For Texas, there's really not, we don't have to have any documentation. We can fire somebody for any reason.
However,
yeah, it is helpful. So even though we don't have to have documentation, I always, even in Texas, recommend really good documentation. If they're late all the time, document, date, how late they were, did you talk to them?
I don't want to get off topic here because this is kind of a rabbit hole segment off, but technically speaking, you're right, we don't. But my fear still is a couple of the things that I'm going to face with the termination. Number one, are you going to start posting negative, fake reviews? Are you going to contact the state board or OSHA, blah, 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 right? And go crazy there. So you want to make sure you've got things documented for that reason. Texas Workforce Commission, even though I can fire you, they'll still give them unemployment, which means my taxes go up. Unless I've got great documentation and can prove that this person had been coached
multiple times
and there was no improvements. Or if they showed up to with a weapon, which I'm like, in Texas, that seems like everybody's right now, so maybe that doesn't matter either. Like, maybe you punch somebody in the face, then maybe that I wouldn't have to have documentation necessarily, like, about all your bad behavior, inadequacies, whatever. But can't they still sue me, though? They could sue me and say you were discriminating against me or you were doing whatever.
Anybody can, honestly. So even with documentation, they can still say that you're discriminating. Now, to me, just as much as we've got to have good clinical documentation and the importance of that and all the things that can go wrong if we're not putting emphasis there, to me, from an HR standpoint, we run many risks if we do not have good documentation in place. So we got to make a habit of, if it's not you, the practice owner, documenting, somebody document conversations that were had, or verbal coaching, or late, if that's, something that's a chronic problem, document that. When are you talking to them? Just document. Just trust me on this. You're going to want to rely back on that documentation.
So all of that to say, though, like, you could still fire them.
Yeah.
But they're going to go apply. There's a high possibility that will go apply for unemployment. In which case, nobody's going to say you weren't allowed to fire this person in Texas.
Correct.
But you still may have to pay their unemployment. Correct. And your tax go up. So that's, I just want to kind of clarify that. And then I also had a colleague a couple of weeks ago that was like, hey, if I do this before the 90 days, and I was like, oh, honey, this could be like, they could have worked in your office for one morning.
Yeah.
And then you tell them tomorrow that, never mind, this isn't going to work out. They could still file for unemployment, and you could still lose that and have to pay.
Yeah.
So you can let them go. Like, I guess, what happens in other states? I guess that's what I don't know. Like, how does it work different in non-Texas that's an at-will state? What about a non-at-will state?
So a lot of times in non-at-will states, there's even more protections in place for the employee. So they could require certain mistakes to have occurred in order for you to be able to properly fire that person. There's different tax ramifications or unemployment ramifications for employers when they fire, but in an at-will state, even in a non-at-will state, the laws can look very, very different as far as the consequence to the practice owner. And some of them in a non-at-will state, they've got, instead of firing somebody and you're getting hit with this tax, like, you have to prove the ability to fire this person. You have to prove that this person was fireable, and then you actually have less of a hit to you because you followed all of the rules of the law for terminating. So it varies widely. I would say just first and foremost, look into your state.
So basically for Texas, there's no penalty to me. But if they apply for unemployment, that's going to be the only quote penalty-ish, but the state doesn't view that as a penalty per se.
It's not a penalty. Okay. It just means that your unemployment tax could go up. It could notch up. So that financially it can hit the practice, but it's usually a relatively minimal hit. So a lot of people are scared of firing for that reason.
We are. And I know it's not a big deal.
It's not.
Or it's definitely worth, in the end, whatever cost of keeping that person around with their stinky attitude or their incompetence is far more expensive than whatever this hit is. But I think it's just that unknown, and that, honestly, it's probably ego. But to me, if it's like you're getting unemployment, I'm just like, you could come into my office, be a complete cluster F, and get rewarded with unemployment that I have to pay you, even though, like, what am I getting as compensation for the mess you made in my office?
Correct.
So I'm always the loser here. I think that's maybe part of it too, going like, this isn't fair. And I guess that's, life's not fair, is what I keep telling my kids all the time. Life's not fair. Like, it is what it is, right? But I think that's a lot of it too, is I think
the fear
and also the whole, like, they got me. Mm-hmm. You got unemployment off me, even though you were a piss poor employee. Yeah. And you still get the better end of the stick. And that is not fair. I think that's, at least for me, that's at least 80% of it is just, that chaps my hide. And probably 20% is like, I don't know. I mean, I don't think this is going to be a big hit. I don't know.
Well, and one way, at least in Texas, one way that potentially protects people is if that employee files unemployment, but you offered a severance, a 1 or 2 week severance pay. When they're applying for unemployment through the TWC, Texas Workforce Commission, they have to indicate whether or not they were paid additional time, even if that was for vacation time. Technically, they have to list that, and the Workforce Commission does find out if the person has been untrue with that. Not in every case, but I have seen employees that were trying to game the system and got caught in that. So they have, if you give them a severance, technically they cannot, let's say it was a 2-week severance, technically they cannot file unemployment for weeks that they were paid. They're having to actually list on their application for unemployment how much they got paid for the week of August 1st through August 5th and blah, blah, blah. They're having to list their salary for that, and they can't claim any unemployment because technically they were getting paid during that time. So it is sometimes, if we're worried about unemployment for any reason, and you're like, oh, I really don't want to have to, have a tax increase, that's fantastic. One option you have is to actually offer a severance pay.
So that was going to be one of my questions for you today was, what do you advise about that? Do you advise giving it, not giving it?
At least in the state of Texas, I like a severance pay. I hate it for so many reasons because it's money that really shouldn't have to be paid, that it's basically a 1 to 2 week vacation for that employee. But I like it because I know there are plenty of jobs in Texas. And if we give that person a couple weeks to find a job and they can secure one and they're getting a paycheck pretty quickly, then that means the potential of that person filing unemployment goes way down, and therefore it protects my clients from a potential tax increase. So I tend to prefer a severance pay.
And if you did, how do you decide how much or how long? Or
at least what I say, at least in Texas, is I know somebody can find a job tomorrow in Texas, but I like a 1 to 2 week severance because that should give them plenty of time to get interviews set up, to apply, to get their working interviews. It gives them a couple weeks to actually do all of their job looking, and then hopefully they've signed on the dotted line in that 2 week period of time. Worst case scenario, they haven't. They don't find something until week 3 or 4, but when they file for unemployment, they're only getting unemployment for week 3 if they didn't find something until week 4. So the tax ramification on you, if any, is going to be very small.
I like that.
Which is going to protect you in the long run. Because that tax increase doesn't automatically go down a few months later. Once that tax increase goes up, and it's minimal, it may be 1/4 percentage point, but it's enough, and it stays around for a long period of time that you're kind of like, I don't want to keep being dinged for this for the next 2 years. And so
I think that's what it is too. Like, to me, I'm like, okay, you made a mess in my office. Now I've had to give you severance, or maybe didn't give you severance. But I think that's why most of us are scared of that workforce commission thing, because I'm just like, you still win. And anyway, but
it's not worth keeping. Like
absolutely.
In this particular case, it was a clear culture problem, and it's not, and a lacking performance issue as well. It was kind of both. And so it's not worth keeping a bad employee on your team just to potentially prevent you from a tax increase. That's not worth it in my mind. That the dollars and cents itself don't add up. When we look at it that way.
Agreed. And I'm glad you're saying all this, because I just have to remind myself of that, because I know all this, and yet I panic through this every time. I think it's just me with an attitude problem. I'm just not happy.
It's not fair.
It's not fair.
Yeah.
Okay. So back to.
So check your laws, but most of the time you've got, there may be some steps that you have to take before terminating somebody. But in this particular case, we're in Texas. We didn't have to do anything, but also we have lots of good documentation of conversations that we've had with this particular employee. So when I got on the phone with your associate to talk him through how to do this, one of the first things I said, I got several things that I'm going to give you here, but one of my main tips, please don't break this rule. Do not chit chat with the person. I've done this. So I've unfortunately had to fire a lot of people throughout my consulting career. And again, I hesitate as long as possible to fire somebody. I'm usually the last one saying to fire somebody, but I've had to do it. I've had to support my clients in this. And 2 times I was waiting on my witness to come into the room, which we'll talk about a witness in a minute. I was waiting on my witness to come into the room. The employee that needed to be terminated came in before the witness did. And so I was in a weird position where I had to start chit-chatting with the person, waiting on the witness. And those are the only 2 terminations that I've done that have blown up in my face, because people feel tricked. They feel tricked. They start this pleasantry conversation like, oh, well, how's the schedule been today? And blah, 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 blah. And they're like, oh, this is a casual conversation. And then as the terminator, you're having to like turn the conversation, and they feel it angers them, and they get hot and they blow up. So if I could say,
because it really feels like a blindsiding at that point.
They are blindsided in that moment. And so do not chit chat with them. If they walk into the room before you've got a witness in the room, which we'll talk about a witness in a minute, but don't sit and chat with them. Be like, oh, I got to step out and grab something. Oh, I forgot my phone. Let me run and grab that. Or, oh, I forgot my pen. I don't care what excuse is. Get out of the room and do not chit chat with the person.
So that's where, when I was asking my associate, because he said, oh yeah, Bethany said just keep it 2 or 3 minutes. I was like, okay, yeah, that's what she's told me before too. So go ahead. Like, what are you going to say? And he's like, and I was like, dude. And he's like, well, I haven't thought about that yet. I was like, you need to think about that. I was like, you can't, and this is before hearing you say this. I didn't know that. But to me, just in my own mind going, how would I do that? Would I say, hey, Susie, come on in. So how's the morning going? Or, hey, Susie, I need to talk with you for a moment. Hey, Susie. Like, I don't even know how I'm going to get Susie in the door.
Yep.
So I was like, so how are you? So I'm trying to pretend like it was me. Like, how would I do this? And so when he was like, I don't know, I was like, are you crazy? You need to figure this out. How are you going to flip it on her going, hey, so how's your morning? Anyway, you're getting fired today.
While you're here, you're being fired. Yeah.
So that makes more sense. I mean, like that, at least it correlates or whatever. Yeah. What I was thinking was like, okay, how do we not make this chit-chatty?
You want it to be from the get-go that when they walk in, you're immediately launching into the termination conversation. So that means you need to have yourself in the room that you're calling them to, and you need to have your witness already in the room that you're calling them to. So you're in there ready. And then you're either sending your witness out to grab the person. Hey, Dr. Jones needs to speak with you for a minute. And if you do that, like in y'all's office, you have headsets. And so you're able to say, hey, Sarah, can you meet Dr. Jones in the consult room? But if you don't have that and it needs to be a physical grabbing, then you could send your witness out, but your witness needs to know, don't say anything. Nothing. No pleasantries, no. Or if the person's like, oh no, what's going on? The witness is silent. Because that person needs to walk into the room knowing that something's up, or at least as soon as they get in the room, they know immediately what this conversation is about. The other thing is, you've mentioned 2 to 3 minutes, a max of 2 to 3 minutes. So there is something that occurs as somebody is processing this information. The longer it's in their brain, the more emotional they get about it. So we think, we need to kind of provide some context and we need to add a little bit of detail and help them to truly understand. Nothing is going to help that person understand. What you need to do to protect your practice, to protect this person that's being terminated, is you need to deliver the information quickly, to the point, get to it, get it done quickly before their emotional radar is off the charts. You want to have them fired and out of the building within minutes, so that when they have an emotional reaction, they're in their car leaving the parking lot. And I know that sounds crazy. You're like, there's no way. It cannot happen that fast. Yes, it can.
And should.
And it should. And the longer that conversation goes, the more dramatic, the more emotional, the more our words can get us into trouble. So what I told your associate is, he was like, yeah, but what do I say? And so I said, you and the witness are going to be in the room. You headset, ask her to come in. She comes in. As soon as her butt hits the seat, you go, I unfortunately have some bad news for you today. We have decided that this is no longer a good working relationship
we think you're going to be happy somewhere else. So today is your last day. Witness so-and-so, Sally, is here, and she's going to help you get your things and get out of, the office today. That's it. I mean, and he was like, that's it? I'm like, yeah, that's it. It's literally, like, when I say 2 to 3 max, like, that was probably, 10 seconds? I should have been clocking it here. It is that fast, that to the point. No pauses, no hesitation, know exactly what you're going to say it, and then you stand up. The witness stands up. The employee may be still sitting there, but everybody else is standing up, indicating this conversation is over. Witness begins to walk out with the employee. What can I help you grab? I've already have the box or the bag, whatever you're going to help that person have it in the room with you. Here, I brought this bag to help you get your things. And then the witness is going to help that employee or ex-employee to gather their things into the bag. So the witness stays with the ex-employee the whole time. They're gathering things, and they're keeping there's no silence. Oh, do you need this? Is this yours? Is this your jacket? Oh, is there anything in this drawer? So there's conversation that's constantly going. Now, they're not expecting a lot of response, but it's silence and prolonged belonging gathering is a recipe for disaster as well. So that witness is meant to kind of keep it going, move it forward, keep talking, just pile things in here. We're off of the termination, and we're focused on your things right now. And then the witness's job is to get the employee out, gather the key. If there's keys that you need to gather, you're gathering the keys, anything that needs to stay in the office, and then they're just escorting that person out. So it sounds almost too simple, but it is effective.
And and not that I didn't believe you, it's just those exact things where I'm like, okay, how are we keeping this short? How are we? And it's so stupid now to like think back on it or to think about, but I think that's what I've always done was like, let me give a nugget or two of why, like almost like hopefully they'll see from my side where they're getting fired. And it's just stupid thought. Like, of course they're never going to see it from my side, ever.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I ever thought they would.
Especially not in that moment.
Yeah. If they're going to go, oh yeah, you're right. I shouldn't have said this bonus is bullshit in the middle of huddle. Mm-hmm. You're right. I called your bonus bullshit in front of the whole team. I'm so sorry for doing that, Doc. You're right. I need to go. Like, like what, like, so why I think that is good to say, this is my final straw, is your negative attitude, and how dare you, not only not appreciative for a bonus, but calling it bullshit in the middle of morning huddle.
Yeah.
Like, anyway, so it's silly for me to think that she would be like, oh yes, you're right. Right. So why would I start with that and open with that? I don't know. But that's what I would have opened with. Like, that's what I was thinking. And so when I'm just like, okay, if we can't open with that because now I'm talking too much and Bethany says, don't talk, then what am I saying?
Yeah.
And so that's your advice. Just come in and I love that. I'm the one who has to deliver bad news today.
Yep.
And we've decided. And that was the other thing before I had talked to you and I'm getting onto associate going, what are you going to say, man? Well, I don't know. Well, you need to know. Like, let's role play this. I don't want you to go in there. Like, this is hard to do, man. Like, and so he was like, yeah, you're right. I'll talk to Bethany. I need to think about it, whatever. And so that's where we were kind of going, do we say something? Do we not? And we were both like, you shouldn't say anything. And, sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
Well, you said to him, well, what are you going to say if she asks why? And
yes, thank you. And that's when he was like, well, I'm just going to say, well, I don't know. I know very little about this. And so I don't have any of the answers to your questions, but I'm just the one delivering the news. And I was like, whoa. So you're going to throw me under the bus. So instead of just coming and slashing your tires too, she's going to come just like behead me. Like, thanks. I was like, no, we need to be a united front here. And I was like, and frankly, I didn't hear you speak up for her. When I told you this is what happened in huddle and this is the last straw, you could have been like, dude, she's doing such a great job. Oh no, what are we going to do without her? I was like, you didn't say anything. So am I incorrect? Like, did you want her and I've overridden you? And he's just like, well, no. I was like, so don't. I was like, first of all, that's why we have Bethany, to throw her under the bus. She's the one. I was like, so I would rather you say something like, like, this is the decision, or this is when I was still going, well, I don't know how she keeps it short, but what I would say is, apparently you called the bonus bullshit in morning huddle. And when we asked, what we should do about this, the advice we were given. So I was like, I didn't even use Bethany's name, but they said, they up there who makes this
ethereal
decision.
They people.
Yes. They recommended that this is a bad culture and you need to go. And he's like, yeah, man, I don't like that either. I was like, well, I don't like it either, but I don't know what else to say. What if we can't get a hold of Bethany? Then this is why we're brainstorming this right now. Like, I know it stinks, but I don't have anything better. And then I got a hold of you later, and you were like, no. You just say, hey, I'm the one who has to share this bad news with you.
We've decided.
Yes,
it's time to part
over.
ways.
Yeah,
it's time to part ways, and we think you're going to be happier somewhere else. And I think that's a very kind and easy way.
And true. It is so true. If you were so miserable about a bonus, and that's got your panties in a twist in the morning, something ain't right.
You're going to be happier somewhere else.
You are going to be happier somewhere else.
And that's what we want for you.
Yes.
Is to be happy somewhere else. He did ask the question, which I think is a very valid question. Well, what if she asks? So, first and foremost, the body language in the room should indicate as we stand up, there's no pause. There's no staring into that person's eyes, waiting for a question. The body language is, I've said my sentence. This conversation is over. We're standing up. We're moving on. So there's a lot of control in that conversation. So they shouldn't get the opportunity to ask the why question. But if they ask, well, can I ask why? Then you have a very generic answer, which you're going to repeat over and over and over again if they continue to ask questions. So let's say they ask, well, can I ask why? The response is, well, we've just determined this is what's best for you and this is what's best for us. So let's get you out, blah, blah, blah. But why specifically? Like, what? I don't understand. Like, why are you firing me? Like I said, we've determined this is what's best for us, and this is also what's best for you. Let's go ahead and have witness, Sally, get your things, and blah, blah, blah. But I need to know. Well, we have determined, blah, blah, blah. Right? So it's just the same exact answer. And what that says to the person is, you're not gonna you can keep asking it all different ways, but I'm gonna tell you the same thing every time. And what it will do is it'll nip that question asking. So it's interesting. I was sitting in on a termination meeting, I guess about a month and a half ago, and the doctor was leading it. I was the witness in this, and
bold doctor.
Yeah.
Good for you, doc. Whoever you are, good job.
Yes,
because I hide. I literally hide.
Attaboy. I mean, so he did a fantastic job of these were people who had been with him for quite some time, and so he and I strategized ahead of time. Same thing. Told him the same thing. Keep it short. This should be, 2 or 3 minutes tops. Here's what I would say. But he led that, and of course, I mean, this person's like, whoa, like what happened? How is this happening? And he did this response. It's just this is what we've determined is best for the practice. This is what we've determined is best for you. The person asked it one more time. But did I do anything wrong? So she asked it kind of differently. Did I do anything wrong? And he
said, we've just decided. We woke up this morning that I hadn't fired somebody in a while.
And it felt good.
It was time to knock somebody off. You drew the short end of the... Like, come on.
Yeah. And again, same thing. We've just decided this is what's best. And that was it. That was it. They're not going to get any more information out of him. And they're realizing that in that moment. And it's like, well, there's nothing else to ask. Let's move this party on. And so, anyway, have that strategy in mind. What am I going to say? If she doesn't pick up on the context clues and doesn't follow the witness out, and she sits there and starts questioning me, what am I going to say? Do not give any additional information.
Which I'm so glad you're saying this, because that would be my opening to go, well, since you ask, why did you say this? And after all that I've done, I don't have to give you a bonus. Yeah. And then you're going to, like that would be me. I would be that emotional and stupid to let that instigate me into this spiral down.
Yep. Which then we kind of have to think worst case scenario. What we're trying to avoid in this short, sweet, and to the point termination, we're trying to avoid an upset employee in the practice. right? So we got to think. We hope this person's not a crazy person, but what if they are? And they start slamming computers and, throwing charts or whatever the case may be. We want to avoid that. And there is a ticking time clock. Get them out of the practice as fast as possible. So that's why we do it short. But also, the more fuel, they're a fire that's brewing, right? They just got terminated and they're like, oh my gosh, what just happened? They're brewing. And we start throwing details. Even if we didn't intend to give the details, and then they ask a question, they're like, well, what did I do? Well, obviously, your attitude's been really bad lately. It's like taking gasoline and just like pour it on that fire and let's watch it burn now. Do not give any details, because you will talk yourself into a very angry person. Not you yourself. The person that's being fired will become inflamed in most situations. So just have your pat answer ready to go. And then it does take, I want to mention the witness piece. I always recommend a witness. Always. I don't care if you're female doctor, male office manager, female. I don't care gender. I don't care your relationship, your long-term relationship with this person, and you want to protect her in this situation from anybody else on the team knowing. I don't care who the witness is. It could be the chiropractor next door that needs to step into this conversation. I don't care who it is, but somebody needs to be there to witness the conversation. That is the maximum protection for you and your practice, because what we don't want is a he said, she said, or she said, we don't want it saying this is what her story is, this is what his story is, and there's nobody that can attest to what happened in that scenario. And if we are dealing with a crazy person, we need to have somebody that's witnessed that conversation so that they can truly attest to what happened in that. But your witness is critical, because your witness is the one that is getting that person out of the building. Can the person who fired the employee do that? Yes, but it's weird now. It's weird because they just said their one sentence, and we need to indicate the conversation is over. I'll call them the terminator, the firer. They're the ones that started the conversation. There is a feeling of this conversation will continue if the person that fired me is helping me get out the door.
And it probably will, because otherwise it'll be just silent.
Yes. So you want to avoid that. Your witness is the one that steps in and is the person that exits.
Okay, so if you find yourself in a situation, because I thought this was also really good advice about the witness. So we were in a situation where now I'm not there, so associates you're not there, and then our office manager-ish person, like, we just knew that would not be a good thing, because this employee that we termed blames everything on this person and on me. Mm-hmm. And so neither one of us could be a part of this because of that bad whatever. So our manager-ish person was like, peace. She literally physically left the building, left the parking lot. She's like, I don't want to be anywhere near this. So now what do we do? Like, who's our witness? Like, all our team leads are not, the one that's there is already the one being the terminator. So you had really good advice for how to, because then I was like, well, I would pick this assistant or this assistant to be your witness. Mm-hmm. So can you walk through the advice you gave him regarding?
Yes. So I liked the person that we were firing on your team was a part of the business team. I liked picking somebody from a different department. It feels awkward for the person that's set elbow to elbow with this person to be in that room when they're being terminated. Can feel very emotional for that person, the witness. So I did not, I like when it can be somebody different on the team that's maybe not as close to this particular person, because we want the witness to be able to kind of control their emotions as well, because they're a stable force that's kind of guiding this person out. So we did pick 2 RDAs on your team that were options. One of them was a more mature, quieter. She's got a very calming presence about her. She can be quiet when she needs to be quiet. And so we ended up picking her as the option.
Well, the other one was not there because it was a slow day, so she wasn't in the building. That's how we ended up. But both of them were...
Both of them were good options. Yeah. But she ended up being the witness. And we did not prep, the doctor, your associate, did not prep her until right before. Because this is another big key takeaway. If your witness is not somebody that's in the loop and knowing that this is coming, it is very uncomfortable for them to know something at the beginning of the day that you plan to do at the end of the day. That is not fair to them to have to sit in that and walk in that and keep their lips shut all day long. And that's very stressful. They can get a lot of anxiety over this situation. So your associate pulled her in a few minutes before and said, hey, this is what I need you to do.
So what did he tell her? This is what I need you to do. So, because you guided him very clearly
yes.
on what to do.
So the witness is meant to sit or stand, however y'all are conducting the meeting, quietly. They don't say anything. They don't have to make eye contact. They can be actually physically back from the conversation against the wall. They just are in the room, but they're a very low profile in the room. Just sit there and be quiet, really. And then they are to, as soon as the termination statement is said, they are to step in and then become the helper. Here, let me, help get your things. And they're actually kind of guiding that person, even if it's putting an arm around them to guide them out of the room to get them to their things and all of that. And again, they are to not answer any questions. They're not to say anything. They're to kind of keep talking, but it's about the items that they're taking out. So
it's like Terminators, like you're going to be happy somewhere else, stands up. And if witness is sitting, stand up. Mm-hmm. Terminator leaves the room. Witness says, do you want to go ahead and go to your desk first and get your stuff and have the bag, the box, whatever, help them get their stuff, then walk them, escort them out, get their key. Mm-hmm. And that's that. So that too should be a very quick 2-3 minutes, if at all possible, to help gather this person's things.
Very fast.
So I think that's one thing that we didn't, when I asked how it went, he was like, I think that's the one thing we should have told witness up front. Because he only grabbed her like 2 minutes before. It was like, hey, I need your help. This is what's about to happen, and this is what you need to do. So it also didn't give witness time, like you said, to be like, I'm not doing that. I'm not whatever. I think she kind of was like, no, I don't want to do that. He's like, I don't want to either. It's something we got to do. Let's go. But I think it took a good 8 to 10 minutes until she got out the building. And so kind of witness was kind of standing there, but this person was up at the front desk and kind of chit-chatting with the other front desk girls. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of dragged along, and we have cameras in the office, so he was watching on the cameras going, I need to go back and intervene, but I was told that I really shouldn't do that. And eventually she left and it was fine. But I think that would be the other piece of advice was, if it is somebody that you're pulling that's not part of knowing that this is coming, prep them like right before you go in, so they don't have to have the anxiety all day. They're to say nothing, and they're to be the mover and pusher and guider to get this person out of the building ASAP.
And ultimately, we want to avoid, because the witness is oh, do you need this? Is this yours? So they're talking. They're keeping the conversation physically right there with the person. It helps to prevent side conversations that can happen. Now, it's going to be very difficult for that person to go up to their desk, gather their things without saying bye to their coworkers or something like that. That's normal. It can happen. But we essentially want the witness to kind of be a distractor to that. And it can be a soft, gentle person that's like putting a hand on the back and, Sally or Sarah, can you look here? Is this yours as well? So she's kind of rerouting her all the time, which is hard. But if you do it in a very nurturing way, it won't come across as, let me stand back, let me lock my arms and glare at you while you gather your things. It shouldn't be that. It should be kind of a distracting force that gets the person out of the office. So I do think pick your person, but it does not have to be a manager. It can be a team member that you think could do that.
I think the other thing in my mind, because my brain just goes there, is make sure they're not grabbing the petty cash bag.
Correct.
Make sure they're not grabbing a handful of charts. Like, you're also watching for things that are not theirs. Mm-hmm. The other question, or anything else about the witness then? Is that pretty much? Okay. The other thing that I did want to just ask real quick here was timing. Mm-hmm. Because then Associate and I, when we were powwowing before I talked to you, was like, okay, what time of day are you going to do this? And I knew his answer was going to be, I'm going to do it at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And this is what I love about my associate. And then this is what I can't stand about my associate, is he's very chill.
Yeah.
Right. And so I need that 80% of the time. And 20%, I'm like, dude, move.
Yeah.
And, there's got to be some sense of urgency. And I think for him, he would be like, I'm not going to let this ruin my day. I'm going to handle this at the end of the day. Versus me, who I'm like, the first thing you walk in the door, I want to get it over with.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, I just said to him, I was like, well, you tend to wait till the end of the day on things. And I need you to, 3 weeks before, when we were having same culture issues and this person needed to have a coaching conversation and he said he would do it. Well, he was waiting till the end of the day. She ended up leaving.
Yeah.
Which then the other teammates were like, you were supposed to have this conversation. Why didn't you have it? And he's like, well, what can I do if she left? And so I'm like, well, what if that happens to you again?
Yeah.
What if she leaves early? Or what if, who's around? I guess to me, that was kind of the point, was how could we make this as least awkward for the entire office? Because I could just see, if you happen to glance up on the security cameras and you see that she's walking out the door and the other front desk members are still there working, then what are you going to do? Out of nowhere, you're going to come bounding down the hall and go, wait, you can't leave yet. I need to talk to you.
Right.
Like that's going to be incredibly awkward and add to the tension and the not smoothness of it. And it's already going to be a terrible thing to do.
Right.
Let's make it as smooth as we can. So of course, then he's like, well, fine, I'll do it first thing in the morning. I'm like, no, I guess my point is I need you to pay attention.
And pick the right time.
So be watching the schedule. Mm-hmm. Be aware. Because I think a lot of times he's not really aware of things because the manager kind of does it, the lead, or I'm there. So he just kind of is like, okay, I'll just do whatever y'all need me to do. But I'm like, neither one of us is going to be there to mastermind this. He's more than capable of masterminding all of this. He just defers to us crazies because we're all crazy. And he's like, fine, I'll just do whatever you need me to do. But he's more than capable of handling it. But I just kind of had to remind him and go, I need you to be, that's another layer I need you to watch for. Because it might be lunchtime.
Yeah.
That you might need to grab her. But what if you're planning on talking to her at the end of the day and then at 2:00 the school calls and her son needs to, that happens all the time with our front desk. Somehow it's never the assistant's kids. I'm kidding. I think it might be.
They're just extra healthy. That's all.
Yeah. No, that was uncalled for. That's actually not even true. I was just being spiteful. But, it has happened with her before that she's had to leave early because of XYZ. And I'm like, so I could just see that you don't want to be like bounding after her because you didn't watch for opportunity. Or maybe you didn't pay attention to, you've got 3 limited exams at the end of the day and you're going to get stuck in those and not have the opportunity to talk to her. So pay attention and watch for that.
Yes, exactly. And I think there's no perfect time, but I think as long as you're keeping an eye on the amount of bodies in the office, the amount of patients or parents that might overhear this conversation, or if there's some awkwardness there's going to be some awkwardness at the front afterwards and you got a waiting room full of people, that's probably not the best time to do it. Also, thinking about the actual employees in the office, is there anybody that could potentially inflame the situation more, even unintentionally? But if there's, a body in the office that you're like, okay, I know that Stephanie always leaves at 3:00 and she would be one that hypes this up, so I'm going to wait until 3:30. And all of that needs to become a factor to where you have the minimal amount of drama that can happen. Lunchtime is a pretty popular time to do it. And then end of day, I would say, is equally as popular. So those tend to be easier times, but it doesn't have to be that. It just needs to make sense based on the whole, what all is happening
to look at the big picture, I guess, is, and I think that's where, as a non-owner, he has not, or as I think a young new owner may not pay attention to that, because I think that's the other thing, like, for a while you're like, oh, well, I've only got 3 employees, but you haven't thought about it. Now suddenly you have 8 or 9 employees and you're still running it the way you did when you had 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And it's different now. There's more factors at play and you need to kind of look at the big picture to kind of go what makes the most sense here.
Yes.
Okay. Did we miss anything?
No.
Yeah. I hope none of us ever needs this information.
Oh, but you will.
Okay.
Yeah.
See? Aha, you're negative, Nelly. I'm trying to be like...
I've lived this reality. It's going to strike. If not once, many, 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 many times.
Well, how have I done this long and not known how to do this right?
Because I always do it for you.
Yeah. Thank you. You can never quit.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone. but we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.